get started. So since y'all are sitting on this side, I'm going to focus a lot today on that. Lesson 3 is entitled Fear, Stress, and Trauma. And we're going to do also a part 2 to parental origins, or origins of parental fears. We'll touch on that a little bit because a lot of times we fail to realize where do we get our parenting styles from? Who taught us to be parents? Okay, so lesson 3, fear, stress, and trauma. We're going to define those for you, so we're going to take a little time up front and define those, and we'll write those definitions down so you'll have them in your book. Normally when I go into homes, we write them down later. I really do a lot of talk. But tonight, as a review, behaviors are a language of a child that says what?
I need attention and I need to be taught.
I need attention and I need to be taught. That's what behaviors say. Most times people focus on what?
Behaviors.
Behaviors. And we want to do what? Consequent behaviors. We want to punish. We want to discipline, as some parents will say. Okay? Which doesn't work, because if we focus on behaviors, what do you tend to get more of?
Behaviors.
Okay, if you try to tell the child, stop lying, why are you lying to me? What do they keep doing?
Lying.
If they're stealing, what are they going to keep doing?
Stealing.
They just get better at it, because we're focusing on the behavior. And I always say this, energy flows where attention goes. So if I put attention or energy into the behaviors, guess what I'm going to get more of? Behaviors. Okay? Behaviors, I say this every week, behaviors are like leaves on the tree. If you pluck the leaves off the tree, you have not killed the tree. If you want to kill the tree, then you have to deal with the root cause of behaviors, which is what? The fear, the stress, and the trauma. Identifying and knowing what the fear, stress, and trauma is will change the behaviors. And the best example I can give you is I have a kid I've been working with. He had 4 people die within a 6-month period of time in his life. Okay? He had a lot of fear, he had a lot of stress, and he had a lot of trauma. And guess what else he had a lot of? Behaviors. And guess where the focus was put on? The behaviors. So we put the focus on the behaviors. Let's look at that as an outcome. If I focus on the behaviors, what do I get now? We get medication, we get DBT, we get CHINS petitions, child in need of services, we get group homes, we get all these other things that have what? Negative consequences to them because of the child's behaviors, which were rooted in his what? His fear, his stress, and his trauma. So as a parent, our job is to help the child to what? Heal. First of all, identify what the fear, stress, and trauma is, and then help them to heal the fear, stress, and trauma. Because simply just doing grief counseling with this child, the parents being there with the child would have made all the difference in the world. But fast forward 7 years, this child's been on every medication you can name. And guess what his number 1 fear is today? He's 16 years old. What's his number 1 fear? That he's going to die. That his parents are going to die. And it all goes back to 7 years old when 4 people passed away. And they started looking at his behaviors and evaluating his behaviors. So you take a child that's been traumatized and then you focus on the behaviors, you just get more behaviors, because now the child becomes more and more angry and frustrated because no one understands how I feel. Okay? I had a grandmother one time. She said, I'm 68 years old, you're 12. If you don't change in 6 years, I'm going to have to put you out. I can't deal with you now. When you turn 18, I know I'm not going to be able to deal with you. I hope you get yourself together. And what did the child hear?
You don't love me, you don't want me.
That's all they heard. You don't love me. So now if the child thinks, my grandmother doesn't love me, what does that happen? What happens to his behaviors? Do they go up or they go down?
They get worse.
They get worse. Simply because she made a statement, a logical statement to this child that made sense to us, but he felt as though my grandmother doesn't love me. So if she don't love me, I don't want to be here with her. So now we get more and more behaviors, okay? Which is not always the best place to look. I'm saying it because we don't want to look at behaviors as the causation. Well, we don't want to look at behavior as a causation of problems or the remedy to solve problems. Behaviors say, I need attention and I need to be taught. Hope y'all wrote that definition down too. Behaviors are the language of the child that says I need attention and I need to be taught. Okay? So let's look at fear. Fear will take you out of the present moment, cause you to look into your past. I'm going to repeat it. Fear will take you out of the present moment, cause you to look into your past and predict the future. Fear will take you out of the present moment, cause you to look into your past and predict the future. You hear statements like, you always do that. You keep doing that. There you go again. That means they've looked into their past and seen you do something and they know you're going to do it again. That's all it means. Okay? Fear will take you there. Since we're writing, we're going to go ahead and define stress for you. For our, just so we'll have all the definitions and then we'll get into it, okay? So next is stress. I like stress because stress is fun to me because when a parent is stressed and a child is stressed, that's when the parent wants to talk. You know? We got levels here and we need to talk. We need to solve this problem now, okay? This is what stress does. Stress causes confused and distorted thinking. Disrupt short-term memory. Changes your breathing and shuts down your autoimmune system. Stress causes confused and distorted thinking, disrupts short-term memory, changes breathing, and shuts down your autoimmune system. Okay? So now, I'm stressed out, you stressed out. Mom, let's have a conversation. How much of that conversation am I going to remember?
No.
Didn't I talk to you about this last week? How many times I got to tell you the same thing over and over again? And then parents would say, oh, you know, they know what they were doing. They did that on purpose. They did that to make me mad. Stress causes confused and distorted thinking. That means the brain shuts down, it's offline. Suppresses the short-term memory. Boom. If short-term memory is suppressed, then it doesn't ever get into long-term memory.
No.
So how are they going to remember something that happened 2 weeks ago if the short-term memory was suppressed for a period of time? How is that possible? But if I'm behavior focused, then I will say to the child, you knew, I told you. How many times I got to tell you this? When their brain just goes, okay? And guess what? This is funny too. What's the last part of the brain to grow? Is the first part of the brain most parents want the child to have, even at 2 years old. You know what that is? They want the child to have the ability to predict consequences for their behaviors. That's the last part of the brain to grow, is the prefrontal cortex. That gives you the ability to predict consequences for your behaviors, the last part of the brain to continue to finish growing. Isn't that interesting? And we want a 2-year-old to know that. If I tell you not to do it, they're supposed to remember that and not do it anymore because I told you so. And that's the last part of the brain to grow. Why you do that? I don't know. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to the child either. The brain's still growing. The brain stops growing at the age of 21. So that's the last part of the brain to stop growing, but we want the 2-year-old to have it. We want the 5-year-old to have it. Of course we want the 13-year-old to have it when their hormones kick in and their body's going through a lot of changes. We want them to be able to do that, and they can't do it. But the expectation is here, okay? And a lot of times it's when I look at behaviors, children are consistent with behaviors. Would y'all agree?
Yes.
If they are doing something they've done, and you've talked to them, they're pretty consistent. That's not even the problem. You know what the problem is? The behaviors are not the problem. And that blows people's minds. You know what the problem is? See, child's behaviors, parents' expectations. Because now they're 5, they're 6, they're 7, they're 8, they're 9, they're 10. Oh my God, they're 13. Now they're 15. And look, they're still there. Still doing the same thing. Why? Because they haven't been taught. Do we have expectations without teaching? We assume that they know and they understand when their brain is being compromised at periods of time when we're talking to them. You ever heard Charlie Brown? How do adults sound in Charlie Brown? Do y'all know that that's what children actually hear?
Doesn't surprise me.
When you talk, especially if you talk logical to them, their brain goes this, and all they hear is wah, wah, wah. And we continue to talk because we need to get this straight right now. You need to understand this. And then next week or 2 hours later, they're doing the same thing over again because brain is still growing, brain is still developing, and they don't remember what you said 2 minutes ago. Especially a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old. Call it goldfish memory for them because when they get stressed, brain just shuts down completely. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've defined fear, we've defined stress, we've defined behaviors. All right, the next one we're going to define is trauma. Okay? Trauma is any stressful event that is prolonged, unexpected, and overwhelming. Okay? Trauma, any stressful event that is unexpected, overwhelming, and prolonged. May not say them in order that time, but there's no particular. Okay? That continues. Here's the part that we have to understand. That continues unexpressed, unprocessed. Hello, how are you? Unprocessed and misunderstood. Yes. You can have a seat on this side. You left your notebook. You were in trouble today. Did I give you a notebook? Or did you bring the notebook? I think I got one. Does anyone else have a pen? I thought I had some extra one in this bag, but I don't.
Here's one.
You have one?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So, trauma, any stressful event, prolonged, overwhelming, unpredictable, that continues, unexpressed, unprocessed, and misunderstood. Okay? So, divorce, moving, changing schools, parents separating, parents arguing with each other, the police coming to the house. Those are all traumatic. Death, family member or close friend, seeing mama or daddy crying is traumatic for a child. Okay? What else can you think of that's traumatic?
Changing schools.
Changing schools. Going from the 8th grade to the 9th grade. My daughter actually cried at the bus stop. Just because she was going to high school. Trauma. Okay? It remains traumatic if it's what? Not expressed, not processed, and not understood. Isn't that interesting?
Who said remains?
Traumatic. If it's not expressed, not processed, and misunderstood.
Not processed, not.
Expressed, processed, and understood. Expressed, we talked about it. We said something to somebody about it. I didn't never talk to you about it. This happened to me. I feel this way. It's processing. We don't get a chance to do those things, okay? So now, if you have a child who has fear, stress, and trauma in their life, what's normal for them to have?
You said what?
If the child has fear, stress, and trauma that's high, what's normal for them to have? Behaviors. Behaviors are normal if you have fear, stress, and trauma. And what do people focus on? We just focus on the behaviors. We don't identify the fear, stress, and trauma. Think about it like this: a child who was, molested, witnessed a murder, changed schools, maybe a parent died, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now they have to go live with another relative. Those 5 things happen to that child. What would be normal for that child to have?
Behavior.
Behaviors. But even in the foster care system, they will say, hey, you're not acting right, get out of my house. Get me another kid. No, I don't want you, get out of my house. So what does that do to the child?
Make them feel
It
unloved.
continues to
unwanted.
traumatize them
Mhm.
over and over and over again. There's no healing. There's no talk about fear, stress, and trauma. There's no understanding of why this child is angry, why this child can't sit in the classroom, why this child don't trust adults. I had a kid, 9 years old, he didn't trust adults because his mother had dropped him off, picked him up, put him with this family, picked him up, took him to this family, picked him up and took him to this family, and then he stayed with this family for about 6 years, and then this family brought him back to his mom. And he's been moved around. Knowing that his mama was out there somewhere, and never met his father before. So how do you think he's going to behave? He's going to have some issues. They call it attachment issues. And when children have attachment issues, they don't trust adults most of the time. And guess what? You hear a lot of talk about attachment, but the reality of it is parents create bonds, children attach. Without the bonding, there can be no attachment. Does that make sense?
Say it one more time.
Parents create bonds in order for children to attach. Without the bonding, there can be no attachment. But a lot of times, what do we focus on? Attachment. Because we're looking at that child's behaviors. That child's behaviors is the problem, right? Nobody
You
agrees with it.
said without that bond.
Without the bond, children can't attach. We as parents, we create bonds. Children attach. If we create a secure bond, then the attachment will be secure. If that bond is ambivalent, that means I'm not sure about you, I don't know if I should trust you or not, then the attachment is going to be ambivalent. Okay? That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have my whiteboard like I used to do when I was across the street, but think about it in terms of an iceberg. Okay, if y'all want to draw one, y'all can. I'm not a good artist, but if you draw an iceberg, 10% of the iceberg is above water, and 90% is below water. Now, when you're riding, when you're traveling, what do people see first, and what do they evaluate first?
The top.
That 10%, which is what? Behaviors. Think about it. Think about the top of the iceberg as being the behaviors, which is only 10% of the problem. Well, actually, it's actually an identifier that there is a problem ahead. Okay? So if I see that 10%, then what's below that? Fear, stress, and trauma. That's where 90% of the problem is. But what do we focus on?
Behaviors.
The 10%. Okay? Now I'm going to give you, I want to call it an oxymoron, but I don't know if that's the right word or not. But if you think about the 10%, 90% of the people in our industry focus on what?
10%.
The 10%, the behaviors. 90% of the people really, what we are trained to focus on and deal with behaviors. And less than 10% is focused on the fear, the stress, and the trauma. And I find it to be quite interesting. This class really should not be rare. It should be the norm. But most people who take parenting classes, who have taken parenting classes, they will say, I've never had a class like this before. I'm usually the 5th counselor in a home, And I've even had other parent coaches work in front of me, you know, and I'm usually number 5. And they say, why weren't we told this from the beginning? All I think I can do is what? Apologize. That's not my fault. Right? Hey, Sean. You see what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, everybody has different training models and what they learn from, but I'm looking at what works, what was effective. And when I know what your fear, your stress, and your trauma is, I can deal with you differently. But if I focus on your behaviors, then I'm going to miss a lot of you. And this is another example of what I'm talking about. Okay? Let's say you were a father with two sons. Your mother just passed away. Your wife left you. Your dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So now let's transition there because he has to move out. He got court to deal with. And then his brother, his only brother, has alienated him. No contact with brother at all. Okay? Now, you know what I'm going to do for you? I'm going to do a psyche eval on you. Isn't it the best time to do one? When the sugar honey iced tea has hit the fan? Shouldn't I evaluate you then? But that's what we have. That's what we do. I've seen it. More often than not, you get evaluated when you're at your worst. It's almost like I follow you around. It's 168 hours in a week. And I follow you around and I catch you at your worst. You may have stumped your toe and you was cussing up a storm. And I said, look, there she is. Look how she's acting. She got problems. Is that an accurate picture of you? Out of 168 hours, maybe 30 minutes of your life could have been traumatic and stressful for you. But I'm going to catch you at your worst and then demonize you for it. That happens more often than not, correct?
Yeah.
I often wonder, why would you do a mental evaluation on a person who is in trauma, who has stress, who has fear? Why don't we catch them now and then look at them 6 months from now or a year from now to make a determination as to where this person really is? You know, most diagnoses in the DMS is say they look at a 6-month period of time. But I'm going to catch you at your very worst, right when your wife left you, with your kids, your mom passed away, your dad was diagnosed, and now you're moving, and now I'm going to catch you and evaluate you. So now, because I evaluate you at your worst, all of my determinations about you, whether or not you get visitation, supervised visitation, see your kids, don't see your kids, whatever, is all based on that evaluation. And that happens more often than not. Okay? As frustrating as it may sound, but it happens. Okay? Now here's an example. Let's take it down to a child. Mom says, stop, 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 stop. Don't do that. Leave that alone. How many times I told you not to do that? There you go again. You keep doing it. If you do it again, I'm going to pop you. Now we're raising our voice. And the kid stops. Right? Next time, 10 times. Next time, 10 times. Next time, 10 times. Right? So now the kid goes to school, kindergarten. What did we teach the child?
Take 10 times.
What's the expectations of the child?
10 times.
Now, the teacher says what?
1 time.
So now it's the child's fault. The child has problems. But at home, he gets 10. 10 shots. At school, he gets 1. Now he gets, go to the office. I don't have time to deal with you today. You know, my son Trey came home and said, Daddy, my teacher mean. She don't like me. She always getting me in trouble. Your teacher getting you in trouble, or are you getting yourself in trouble? And now, is he really getting himself in trouble when he's used to this? This is what he was being taught. Right? So what's the solution for Trey? Drugs. Ritalin. He needs it. Right? Because he can't sit still unless you tell him 10 times. So we're going to put him on Ritalin to see how that works. So he can sit still and focus. You look at me like a deer in the headlights. Are you okay? Okay. But that's what happened. That's what happened to my son. Okay? So now we got a problem because he doesn't act that way with me because I'll say it 1. Mom says 10. So every female he meets, what's his expectation? 10. So he can't accept responsibility for what he's doing because he's not listening. Why? Because in his mind, he was taught 10. So he waits for number 10. He waits till the voice gets loud. Then he stops. But as long as you say, stop, 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 don't do that, stop, stop, stop. Guess what you're doing? You're teaching. Right? As parents, that's our job. We only have 2 jobs. Take care of ourselves and teach. Take care of yourself, mind, body, and spirit, and teach. Values and standards. And most parents fail at those 2 jobs. Right? So now, they want to drug Trey, just like we're going to catch you at your worst and prescribe medication for you too, as an adult. They'll give you medication too. So when do we look at the fear, the stress, and the trauma of the individual? When do we help heal that? When do we teach them to regulate themselves? Or do we go to medication and let's see what the medicine will do for them? And they called it medicine. But there was I have a documentary done back in the 80s. There was a meeting, a convention with doctors and pharmaceutical companies. And they had a meeting and said, we have an untapped market of unlimited potential that we need to invest in. And guess what that untapped market was?
Good money.
Children.
Medicating children.
Children. Go back and do your research and find out when children started getting medicated. And it's almost an epidemic proportion in the East Coast. Yeah. Doctors get a kickback for writing prescriptions. They get free trips and bonuses and everything. Side journey a little bit, but did y'all know that doctors, once they finish medical school, they don't have to go back and get recertified or retrained? Did y'all know that?
No.
If they graduated in 1954, they don't have to go back to school.
They have to renew their license.
It's
That's
just
just a
money.
fee. Yeah.
It's just a fee. It's
Yeah.
not a retesting.
No. So who educates who educates the doctors?
I guess we're hoping that they educate
The pharmaceutical
themselves.
companies do. The pharmaceutical companies. Because the human body doesn't change. You know what I'm saying? If you're a black female, they know the physiology of you, but now they need to learn how that drug is going to affect you.